And this is a volume test. All right. All right, it is 10:01. Who do I have in the chat? Will you just sound off if you're able to? Just reason being, so Thelma's here. Hi, Thelma. I want to talk about the final project just a little bit, but I want to make sure that people are here before I do that. Tatiana's here. Okay, Tatiana had the question. So, and feel free to ask anything about that, even as I'm drawing throughout the live stream. If you have questions about hey Alexis, if you have questions about the final project or anything really, just let me know. Um, the idea with the final project is that you're doing a self-portrait, and it's going to feature kind of environment as well. So the question Tatiana had, based on what I had put up in Canvas, was, uh, is it space, like the space we're in, is that like head space, or is that like actual physical space? And the answer to that question for me is both would be great. Like physical space, because it's going to be sort of select the space that you put yourself based on it has the power even years from now to bring you back to this weird time. So for me, it's going to be this basement studio now as it is. I've done a lot of things in here to sort of get myself ready, particularly like this computer situation, to get myself ready to sort of just be down here doing classes and stuff. So that's what, if it were me, that's what I would be sort of thinking about, is this basement studio and what I've had to turn it into so that I can do this to whatever degree I am. Combined with my headspace, so maybe the way that I do the image, if there's uncertainty or like flying by the seat of your pants or something like that, maybe there's something about the image that evokes that feeling, or maybe just in the way that I do the image, it has a really uncertain feel to it, or an unsettling feel to it. Maybe not unsettling. It's not so much unsettling as it is like, I don't know what. I guess uncertain might be the best word. So I definitely do want you to be in a space, like take it away from just being, here's my head and that's it. Into sort of saying something a little more than that. If it's like, and it doesn't have to be like where you've been making art necessarily. Like if your bedroom has become like the place you exist, and there's like pile of clothes and bed and nest situation, and then you've got like, show us what that's like. And don't assume it's going to be boring, because it might be boring for you, but it's not going to be boring for us. It'll be interesting for us to sort of get that view, that sort of snapshot of what your situation is like. Just a heads up. So Alexis, do we know if the online class thing is continuing throughout the fall? The answer to that is we have not received a definitive word yet, though we are preparing right now to do like a hybrid thing where you have online lectures, and like the introduction of the content stuff is online, some online practice stuff, like you do some independent work, and then for part of the class, and then for the other part of the class, you come to the classroom and we have like a class session like normal. Though it's looking like we'll probably have to arrange it so that there are fewer students in the classroom so we can stagger the days that the particular student groups meet or whatever. So hybrid is what they call it. That's sort of what it's looking like right now for fall. Though I don't know for certain because we haven't had the final, we're preparing everything for that, but we haven't had the final word saying that is what we're doing. So right now fall looks like it's just going to be in person, business as usual. I'm not so sure that that is going to be the case, but Thelma, that is a great question, and that is what I want to do. So moving forward, and particularly with the final project, and that's the one thing that suffered, I feel like, and maybe it's partially the way I'm doing it or whatever, is that in time, that real time feedback that we get has gone. It's gone. If you want to send me images, absolutely, I'll give you feedback on those images. If you want to, particularly if you want to come to the Zoom session like at 11:30, you can drop in. And I did this with a student. They sort of dropped their image file in the chat. I opened it in Photoshop and just like penned over the top of it about like, oh, that anatomical structure or whatever it was. I'm totally willing to do that in the open Zoom sessions. And then this week, so here's a heads up, this week is the last of the live streams, and next week is going to be work on your final project, work on anything that's missing in preparation for turning that stuff in. But I am open to having that same sort of Zoom meeting in progress feedback situation. Would you all be interested in that? I will send well, we could sort of do it by appointment as well next week. Like maybe, I don't know, during the 10 to 11:30 hour, we could just drop in as needed and get some feedback. Whether I overlay it in Photoshop or not, or just see what you're doing and offer verbal feedback, either one of those is fine. All right, we'll plan for that. So this session, and would you be interested, so I'll send an announcement to this effect. I'm just thinking on the fly, like we could do a Zoom on, is today Wednesday? Oh, today is Wednesday, never mind. I was gonna say, oh no, yeah, usually we do tomorrow. So tomorrow, Thursday from 10 to 11:30, instead of a live stream, we could do a Zoom session of the similar sort, or we could just do a feedback Zoom session on the Expressive head that we're working on right now. If you want to do that for tomorrow instead of another live stream, we can all just get together in a Zoom tomorrow morning at 10 and have some feedback, or in fact, I think that would work. Well, let me know what you think. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start this. You've got me left-handed, so this is the real me, not the flipped back and forth me like usual. I've just kind of switched my arrangement around a little bit. Let me start recording. So the idea here, this one, I do not have a preliminary sketch. I'm not going to start with a preliminary sketch. I think for this expressive head, I'm going to let the proportions slide. And that's a bad way of putting it, actually. I want to say letting them slide indicates maybe that I'm like going to be lazy about the proportions or whatever. And I'm not going to be as fastidious in my measuring and checking. I'm going to kind of let things distort and perhaps distort them on purpose. I'm working on black paper because kind of like the contrast that gives me with the colors. And I'm just going to play with the structure, so the sizes of things might get weird, the overall head might get weird, but the structure themselves, like the rendering, the way they exist in space, I'm going to mimic that, even if the sizes get distorted and don't make a lot of sense. All right, I need to remember to send a message out to do Zoom tomorrow instead of live stream, so everybody knows to come to the Zoom session. I'll set up a special Zoom session that the number for which will be in the announcement for tomorrow. All right, so I'm going to think color and where to begin with this figure. And I just keep gravitating towards the one eye, so I'm just going to start there. All right, good. This is an intense red. So I'm not going to worry too much about the size of this eye. I'm just going to kind of go for the shape. That's roughly what that area looks like. There's the top of eye. Oh. Rather than letting these folds be specific to the folds that are on the actual model, I just want the feel of the folds. So I notice above his eye, there's like a lid shelf, and then there's like a little wrinkle, and then there's his sort of upper, there's like a pad of skin up in this corner. Alexis, oh, you mean, so for this week's head drawing. So, thank you for bringing that up, Alexis. There are a couple of you that have already turned in your head drawing. I had not posted the head drawing, the expressive head, last week in what I felt was a timely fashion. And so you'll notice the due date on it is actually May 10th rather than the May 3rd Sunday. So you got an extra week on the expressive color head, mainly because I was dropped the ball. I was off point on getting it posted. So yeah, take your time to this week to do a better version of that head. But otherwise, that's sort of, hopefully that answers your question, Alexis. I'm going to start up my copyright-free music, which is very repetitive. I notice his head is kind of tilted away, like it tapers from his jaw to the top of his head. So I think I'm going to play with that taper and just make it taper a little more. He's got this nose ring, and I'm not entirely sure I'm going to make use of that nose ring. I guess if it's part of the person's personality, who am I to say it's not valid? But you may find this is an enjoyable way to work if you trust yourself a little bit. Letting proportions slide. Like, I'm not doing any measuring. I'm just going to let this thing become what it is. Though I find sometimes that frees me up to focus on things that, I don't know, maybe are more important. He's got a bit of a widow's peak. Like I can hint at what's there without, or I can like riff off of what I see without like being so hung up and so precious about what exactly is there. And that's kind of the point of expressive is to kind of, it's to express, of course, but it's also not to be so tied to, like, is his eye really that close to the edge of his, oh no, it needs to be over just a little bit. That goes away, and I'm trying now to just capture some kind of feel, play with the forms, play with the color, whatever my game is what I'm going to be doing, right? And for me, it's going to be like playing with the form of the thing, like the three-dimensionality of the different structural parts of the face, without so much of a of a being stuck on the sizes. And you'll notice I say that, like, even as I say that, I recognize myself as someone who can't let stuff be truly expressive. Well, I don't know. That's a bad way of saying it. I always lean towards accuracy, or like even now, like the face is becoming a proportional thing in a way. It's not perfect to the reference, but it's still going to be like relevant, or it's going to be reasonably workable to itself. The danger here, as I see it, is to go so far in the expressive territory that you kind of like everything falls apart. Like it just looks lazy, like it just looks like you didn't try and you're calling it expressive. And you don't want that. That's not the point of this. His jaw is really big, it looks like to me, and it's partly the tilt of his head, but I think that maybe partly is just this guy. So I'm going to give him a bigger mouth maybe than he's got. Oh, and he's got these teeth that kind of slope up. Remind myself of the gap between his teeth. Felt like a dark red when I picked it up, but now it's like it's hot. Right, I'm not going to worry too much about color either, but I am going to, I don't know, maybe, that's a soft green. Ooh, I'm sure it's going to be lighter than it seems. I think I'm going to go just a little bit darker than that. And I think one of my rules here is going to be everything that's in the light is going to get some of this green. Just like one pass. Let's see. To keep the proportions in check while you do that, or you have a tendency to make small things too big? Oh, I see what you mean. So it's keeping the proportions in check. One thing that's tough, I find, is if you draw the face, and it seems to work better for me when I'm working in pencil. If I draw the face like the oval first, like the outer borders of the face, then try to paste features inside, it's always like, oh, like you end up fighting and wrestling and fussing with things because you drew this first, and then you tried to place stuff inside. But if you saw the way this one was happening, I started with the eye, then I just kind of like started placing things by the gut where they felt like they should go. And then I just let the outer edges happen, after that, or based on what was happening in the features. And that can sometimes help. It's hard for me to tell or to know if that's a function of drawing a ton of faces and getting a feel for where the features should be. Because heaven knows I've done enough heads where you draw out the structure, put your center line, put your eye line. I still draw heads like that occasionally, or quite often. But you also have to free yourself up to make, to be able to make these more on the fly decisions about the head you're drawing. I don't know if that answered your question whatsoever. Like, don't let the outer bounds of the head be the end all be all. Like, I've drawn this head, this oval. Now I call it the oval, but it could be any shape, this outer frame for the head. I've drawn it, now I'm stuck, and I have to make everything fit inside. Well, I don't know, not necessarily. So I'm just going to spend this green. Alexis, I don't want it to sound like that's bad. Like you should never draw the outer edges first. That's not really true. What I would say that you shouldn't do is you shouldn't establish for yourself, you shouldn't corral yourself and then force yourself to work inside of that corral. Even though that's similar to what I make the students in beginning do with the negative shapes, at a certain point you need to kind of trust yourself and this is definitely heading towards goofy territory, but I'm just going to lean into it. Oh, this head, by the way, is just something I grabbed off of the Reddit Gets Drawn Reddit. I was toying around with doing a picture of my dad, but that's loaded. It's so loaded. For today's approach, I just wanted to kind of play a bit. And I feel like the relative strangeness of this person, I don't know, gives me freedom to play. I'm trying to decide. There's something about the mouth that is working-ish, but not as well. And it's a proportional thing, and I'm trying to decide if it's like, oh, this needs to be up just a tad. And I'm trying to decide, oh, hey, is that really what I should be worried about right now? My struggle is that I put things right on the border of disproportionate. And so then they start to get, rather than being like, oh, that's really expressive, it's kind of like, oh, that's a little bit just awkwardly proportioned. At least that's how I feel about it sometimes. I'm just breaking this border that I had made earlier to give a sense of the beard. So that irregular edge, I'm not drawing 1,000 hairs. I'm just kind of scraping on that border that I see between light and shadow to create this sort of irregular edge. And it's going to say beard more effectively, I think, than drawing a bunch of hairs. So I'll probably do the reverse if I come into the shadow of this one. That's what I would say about hair in general, is that it's better to get the shape of it and then play with the edges than it is to try to like draw a bunch of individual hairs. So it's like this, the silhouette and the border between light and shadow is often enough. Now I'm going to grab that soft green that I had earlier and see what it does on this green. It's about the same value, so. My question for this one is how out there do I want to get in the shadows? I kind of like this red. I might hang on to this red stick that I did the line work with and just fill shadow shapes with it, and it'll take on this real negative vibe. So maybe I'll model the things that are in the light, nice and smooth, or nice and sort of light and shadow style. But then instead of going into the dark and keeping my darks and lights separate, I'll just go straight color contrast and do this red as kind of like the shadow fill, and it'll take on that weird negative feel. sticks that I'm using. I'm going to try and be more decisive with these marks. This is like a mint green. I'm kind of just staying in the green realm here. And that sun is glaring off of his face a ton, so I need to, instead of just mindlessly piling light on, all blown out like the image has it, I'm going to think about the form and the structure here just a little bit. And it's like the top of a cheek shelf that drops off, starting maybe right up there. One thing I like about this black paper is that it gives you that heavy dimension, like really strong light and shadow, really rather quickly. It's similar to the, if you were in beginning and you remember that black paper drawing, it's like, wow, the sense of space that you get, or the sense of volume and three-dimensionality and stuff that you get is really a lot. And that's just how this paper behaves. It gives you that deep dark really fast. I'll play this form a little bit more. There's kind of a bridge in the image, like they kind of just meld together a little bit. I'm going to lighten this up just a tad to show this shelf, like the cheek rolls in and then shelves out. Same on the other side. Those are some of my two favorite spots, right next to the nose, lightening up those two little triangles. It like gives you a muzzle and pops the nose out at the same time. I also like just down from that in the corners of the mouth, usually there's like a light spot here and a light spot there where it dishes in. And I'm just using my full pastel set at this point, or at least this kit. Even though I've only used a couple of colors so far. And maybe. So in the image, this is the lightest part. But I'm like, I don't necessarily want it to steal the show. So I'll get some of the value transitions here, but I'm not gonna blow it out as heavily as maybe I will down here, just so I can drive focus towards the features. And here I'm just using this darker green that I did the rest of this with to blend the lighter green that I put down. So it'll blend it pretty smoothly, and it won't give you the smudgy look that your fingers often give you. It'll keep kind of a painterly pastel look to it. Oh. All right, I'm going to try that red thing I talked about before. So I'm going to go into the shadows with this red. And maybe I'll think about the shadows in terms of the darker parts of the shadows staying black paper and the lighter parts of the shadows being red. We'll see how it comes together. So he's got... That's getting rid of some of the depth, so that's already taking on that negative feel. And if I compare it, I'm like, there's something nice about the value red. So I'll hint at the pupil there, just by having the middle be slightly darker than the edges. But I'm not going to go in fully. The shadow's just going to kind of stay separate. Or, sorry, not be really specific inside of it. It's just going to be shadow shapes. This needs a little more specificity. Do I like that? Yeah. Yeah, I kind of do. The nose too. For all that talk about nose rings, I didn't put it in, did I? It's not too late. I need to make a decision here. Is there any part of that mouth that is in the light, picking up reflections from outside of the mouth? But I think starting from under his mustache on this side and over to under his mustache on this side and over. It's all in shadow. So it's getting the red treatment. Right, now hair, what do I want to do? I think I want the hair just to be a silhouette. I think I'm just going to leave this upper portion going off the page and maybe just have like a bit of a background color through here, and just have his hair and supporting stuff fall into the background. Pop some of this last little bit of value out here. This is just a really soft, it's kind of a yellower green. This is where the webcam really lets me down. It just looks kind of like white on the webcam as I see it, but it is not that. Add a bit more volume to this hair, just to flesh this section out just a little bit. This is maybe like right where the hair is kicking off from the face, so it shelves just a little bit more light. I might have gone overboard there for a second. I'm going to test background, and I think I want a blue. I think I want a blue background. Too. And as I look at this, I mostly like it. That's high praise coming from me. I mostly like it. There's part of me that really wants to get into those shadows and render them, but I think I just want to soften some edges maybe. Just where it makes sense to. I wonder if I could come back with a more saturated green or maybe a blue green and make it feel like there's areas of this green that's a little more saturated, I guess is the point. A little more like introduce that color variation. Like maybe up under the eyes there's a little more. A little more variety to the color. I think anywhere I see like a pink, I'm going to add this teal. And that's not based on anything but whim. I could have picked something else. But this is kind of the value of the more yellow green that's down, but maybe a little, it's closer to the blue. I'm going to give him that lower lip in teal. And I'll come back and bring the value back into it in a bit. So here I'm using that light green stick again, but I'm putting it on top of that soft teal stuff that I just had. just hatching some of this middle green back into the teal just so it doesn't seem quite so disconnected. Believe it or not, at this point, it is not too late to go back on top of this with some flesh tones and take it towards way more realistic skin. Right now it's green and blue. I could spray fix right now and work on top of that and have this kind of be an underlayer that sits. Or I could pick these intense pinks and start laying them down into this green, and they'll kind of mix up and neutralize the intensity of the pink and head towards a more natural skin color as well. So I don't think I'm going to do that on this, but there's potential. All right, I think I do want to go into this shadow now and sort of I don't know, it seems like it needs a little something. Maybe stuff just needs to get even more intense and more hidden. Yeah, like maybe that's the answer. So I'm just going to play shadow against light right here. Really based kind of loosely off the image. At this point, I'm kind of responding to the drawing and what appears to be light and shadow in the drawing as well. Yeah, I kind of like that. This is a softer pastel than I was using before. And so it's really laying down the color quite strong. An attempt to do a green and red drawing without it looking like a Christmas decoration. Yeah, I like that. I'm just gonna all shadow in the face. Just gonna get this treatment. irregular edge. Do I include the beard? Yeah, probably. Now I think that just needs to extend to the whole bottom part of this image. See if that makes him look like he has a giant beard. Yeah, that's reasonable. Hint at some of these eyebrows, and this green just isn't dark enough, I don't think. I'm going to use this dark green to do some of my halftone transitions. So what I'm doing is laying it down a little bit too heavy on the edge, and then coming back with this other green and smoothing it out. just making sure here with a clean finger that's now picked up this red. I'm just going to chase back. Oh, it's hard for the camera to see it. Chase back some of this texture down here. I don't really want that texture to steal the show. So I'm not going to smear everywhere. Just down here where the texture felt like it was getting to be too much. I'm not doing the whole hair. I'm just going to break this edge a little bit just to give some sense that there's a transition there. Here's where I'm making up some more light. So I'm using this really soft sort of yellow, and I'm just adding some shine to the skin. Any shelf that seems like it would be facing upwards or straight out to us or something, like through here, is getting a highlight. These shelves here that kind of face up are getting highlights. Not everywhere, just kind of here and there. Little bit of cleanup. There's something, I don't mind this shape over here. There's something about this shape that just seems too easy, and in the image there's like a swoop, and it's not exactly in the same spot, but I'm gonna put. Put that swoop in. The question is, do I want to take this all the way red all the way up? I think I kind of don't. I kind of like where it's at right now. I don't think I want to do that too either, because that's going to be really quite similar to that. I feel like this dark blue. It's kind of framing things just fine. Maybe I'll get a clean finger and just take some of the texture out of this too, so it goes background. This is just to send this shape backwards, like get rid of its textural oomph. Because that much texture in this is going to call for attention. It's going to have us looking at it. Something really heavily textured like that kind of maybe it gives it more visual interest than it deserves if it's truly a background. Let's see this from a distance. Yeah, so now the place with the most texture becomes right through this face. As it should be. All right, I've got 15 minutes. That's what I'm showing until 11:30, but I think I'm going to leave this one here. I'm going to leave it like this. And as I said, believe it or not, you could do skin on top of this. Skin mixing on top of it, but at this point, with how heavy some of this stuff is, I probably would need to spray fix. All right, I'm going to call it there. So that's it for this one. Just a reminder about tomorrow. So tomorrow we're not going to do a YouTube live stream. We are going to have a Zoom session. Maybe I'll have a drawing out, but I think we'll just do some in progress sort of feedback and looking and seeing what you've got. Hopefully I can see the colors and everything works reasonably well on Zoom. Oh, you know what I did forget? Let's just give him this real quick. That should come out lower. There we go. All right, where was I? I can't stop. Yeah, so Zoom session tomorrow for feedback on your expressive heads, and then clarification if you need it on the final project, what you should be up to, what we're expecting with that. So, all right, folks, we'll call it there. I'm still going to have my 11:30 Zoom session today, so you're welcome to pop into that if you like. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye all.